Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. We're going to cover the Major League Baseball playoffs with Belly Up's own Graeme Wallace. We're going to talk all kinds of NFL topics, things like Urban Meyer, the trades and pickups of this week, and also give you our pick sixes for the weekends. And time permitting, we'll talk some college football as well. Talk some fantasy football with Kevin Wilson. A lot going on tonight. That and so much more. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove Podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Welcome into a new edition of the Sports Stove Podcast. I'm your host, Vince Stover. I'm joined as I am by my dad most of the time. Dad, how you doing?
Doing good tonight.
All right, so a lot of things happening in the sports world. We got some guests to help us tonight that we'll bring in here in just a few minutes. We've actually got two guests on tonight. We don't typically do the two-guester, so we've got that going on in just a few minutes. We'll be joined by Graeme Wallace, baseball aficionado, whatever that means, with Belly Up Sports, and we'll talk Major League Baseball playoffs and all the goings-ons there. We've got some interesting topics to cover in the NFL today, Dad. We'll talk about Urban Meyer and get some thoughts on that whole situation, which I'm sure will be riveting. We've got some transactions that went on. We're going to talk about coaches getting fired. They haven't been fired yet, but maybe after this week. And then we'll see. If we've got time, we've got some college football stuff to talk about, but we've got a loaded episode. We're going to have Kevin Wilson from Belly Up Fantasy. He's going to join us to talk about who we should add on our teams, as well as players that have overachieved or underachieved so far this year as well. So a lot happening tonight. We've already had sporting events going on. If you're listening to us live, the Astros have already defeated the White Sox in Game 1. Red Sox and Rays playing tonight as well. And so lots of baseball stuff. And we would be amiss if we didn't start with baseball and all that's going on in the world with baseball. So first, almost forgot. Tonight we're presented by La Terrain Watches and Accessories. Built for the man on the go, the Compass by La Terrain is a watch that is primed to take on life's moments. From casually keeping time around the boardroom table to backing you up in tough terrain. Style and function go hand in hand with the Compass wristwatch, and it offers dependability under any circumstance. You can find the Compass and so many other products at la-terrain.com. If you use the code SPORTSSTOVE, you're going to get 10% off your purchase. Again, that's la-terrain.com. And use the code SPORTSSTOVE for 10% off your purchase. Now, joining us to talk some baseball is the professor himself. I don't know if he's a professor or not. He's actually been crying, so I'm not sure how he's looking tonight because the Blue Jays just missed out on the playoffs. But joining us now is the one and only Graeme Wallace. Graeme, thanks for being back with us.
No, it's great to be with you, Vince. Dale, I looked a bit too happy there when you introduced me. You're right. I did have some sad moments starting Sunday afternoon, but we're into Thursday now. I've been able to move on. Tough end of the season, certainly for the Blue Jays. They took one on the chin, but the future is bright. Baseball playoffs are here, so it's a great time of year.
Do you, as a Blue Jays fan, do you go back and look at two games within the season, you think, man, that's a game we should have had, and all this would be different?
No doubt. Towards the end of May, they had the 6-game losing streak, and Tyler Chatwood had a couple of meltdowns when he was just walking everything on earth, seemingly. And you know, he had a couple of weird interactions with manager Charlie Montoyo. He ended up getting DFA'd eventually. I think about some of those bullpen meltdowns. I think about some of the games. Also, no one talks about this, but some of the games when the offense didn't show up, that they weren't able to pull out. But at the end of the day, they finished one game shy. There's a lot of things that could have worked out differently. But you know what? There's a lot of games that they won that they had to come back. There was that wild comeback against Oakland. They did the same thing a few days later against Baltimore. So they just weren't quite good enough this season. You can think about woulda, shoulda, coulda, but it's professional sports, and you know, it was a tough day, but they gotta get better over the offseason and kind of reload for next year.
I mean, you think maybe a healthier George Springer to start the season, maybe that
Yep.
tilts it a little bit. But you're right. And any team can look at it and go, boy, they could look at 10 games and say, oh, we should have won these 10 games and we would have been in, whatever. Cincinnati, I'm in the area where there's all kinds of Reds fans.
Yeah.
And until about the last month, they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to make the playoffs and we're going to win the World Series. It's like, no, you're not. Look at your bullpen. It's not going to happen.
You've been calling that. I'll give you kudos. You've been calling the Reds collapse for months now. And certainly it did happen at the end, even though they played Pittsburgh like about 10 times in the last month. They kept losing to them. So
the collapse happened far later than I thought it was going to happen. So I still give a round of applause to the Reds. They had a pretty decent season, at least far better than I thought they were going to be. But
you and me both.
Let's start with the wild card games, and then we'll get into what's ahead for us. Boston and New York. Boston ends up winning 6-2. The game was very close early on. We actually threw a good portion of that game.
Yeah.
I felt like the Yankees were the more talented team pretty much all season. I think they're more talented than Tampa, although the pitching is questionable and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What is it with the Yankees? Why couldn't they pull it off this year?
Yeah, I think with that lineup, they've got a lot of the same kind of hitters. It's kind of a feast or famine kind of thing. And then they added to it with Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo, a lot of uppercut swings, a lot of home run hitters, but a lot of strikeouts too. So I think when you have too many of guys like that in your team, even though they did add a couple left-handed bats, you don't have enough diversity, and I think they needed to hit more doubles and singles than trying to swing for the fences all the time. Obviously, Stanton kind of got robbed on that one shot that went just off the top of the green monster there. But I just think they needed a bit more diversity in their lineup, and I also think Garrett Cole really let them down over the last month or so of the season. You think $324 million over 9 years, and he couldn't even pitch 3 innings, guys. So pretty disappointing finish to the season there for Cole. I just think they were disappointing on many levels. DJ LeMahieu had a disappointing year. Gio Urshela had a breakthrough a couple of years ago. He hasn't been able to find the same form. So more talented, I'm not sure, but I just think they have too many of the same kind of players.
Garrett Cole is now the official spokesperson for Spider Tack. He was definitely all for it. Maybe who knows if he was using Spider Tack or not, but his game changed drastically after the cut down on Spider Tack. And he had some good games after that and some pretty solid performances, but consistency wasn't there for Garrett Cole this year.
No.
The Red Sox, they beat the Yankees 6-2. They were in first for much of the year in the AL. East, right? And all these sorts of things, but they struggled at times towards the end of the year. They were able to hold on to that wild card spot. Are they legit contenders this year?
I don't know. I think we all kind of were surprised by the Red Sox start, and it got into June. It's like, well, they're still in first place. They kind of had a bit of a rough patch there, and they were able to rebound. I kind of think they're playing with house money a little bit here, and I also kind of think they're really in tough in this ALDS series against the Rays. They went 8-11 against Tampa during the season, so I think it would be surprising for them to advance. Sure, they're in the tournament, so they're contenders, but I think Red Sox fans are really happy to still be watching baseball at this point in the season, and I think they look more in 2022 as a year that they can really kind of take off.
In the National League, the Dodgers were able to pull it off over the Cardinals. A great ending to a game with a walk-off home run by Chris Taylor on top of all that, and not one of the guys. I mean, Taylor gets paid, but not like Mookie Betts and things like that. The Cardinals scared me, and I'm a Brewer fan. Before the season started, I thought the Cardinals would win the NL Central. I thought they were the best team in the division. They looked really bad for certain parts of the season. Then all of a sudden at the end of the year, they came on strong, but they couldn't pull it off against the Dodgers, which isn't a surprise. The Dodgers were the second best team in the National League this year. I guess we shouldn't spend too much time on the Cardinals, so let's just transition to the Dodgers. They've built a team again to be a World Series team. They've got the talent there, but they haven't really been able to, even with their win total, they haven't been able to put together that cohesion that we've seen by some teams in the past. So the Dodgers, they are, I think, contenders. How serious of a contenders are they, do you think?
As serious as it gets, really. I mean, 106 wins. It's crazy when we talk about cohesion. They're 32-12 in their last 44 ball games, and it still feels like they can't make up any ground on the Giants. Obviously, they ended up losing that series, so they're as serious as it gets. They're defending World Series champions, and I think there's a sense among the fan base and the players that they won the World Series last year, but if you think about how good they've been over the last 8 years or so, they had to win in that 60-game season with limited fans and limited celebration. There was a bit of a controversy with Justin Turner with no mask and stuff. We think about where we were a year ago, right? So I think they want to go back and then win it again. But I think they're going to have their hands full with the Giants in that DS series.
So let's stick with the NL then. The Giants, I expected them to end more like the Red Sox. Honestly, I just never thought they were going to be able to maintain what they were doing all year yet.
Yeah.
And my dad's sporting the Giants shirt tonight. They just kept on winning. And every time the Dodgers won, the Giants won. And they just never gave up ground. And there was one spot late in the season where they flip-flopped, but then they took it back and they just ran with it. So that's that series between Los Angeles and San Francisco. It might be one of the better NLDS series, I think, that we've had in a while.
Yeah, you talk about a combined total of 213 wins on the season. It's unbelievable. The most combined wins of any series ever, which is incredible. I just think it's a shame these two teams aren't meeting in the CS. I know they have to. The wild card team has to play the best division winner and all that stuff, but I think it's going to be a dandy. I think it's going to go 5 games, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, the matchups for the other side of the bracket are very intriguing as well. I think no matter who comes out of those two series, the Brewers played both the Giants and the Dodgers very close in the 7 games they played them, and the Braves and the Dodgers, they were in the NLCS last year, and a lot of people forget this. Atlanta had a 3-1 lead, and they kind of let it slip away. So I think a rematch in that regard could be very intriguing as well.
You look at strengths for these teams. San Francisco, their pitching has been solid. The Dodgers, their bullpen is a little suspect, I think, at least for again, talking about a team that's 106 wins in the season. But they're not perfect, but they could be. Nobody'd be surprised if all of a sudden they played lights out. You look at Milwaukee, they've got great starting rotation, okay middle relievers, a great closer, but they lose their setup guy because – in a drunken celebration, he punches a wall and breaks his hand. It blows my mind, the stupidity of some millionaires and what they can do. And I don't know if Devin Williams is a millionaire yet or not. He will be, or he would have been.
He's a young man. Sure. He hasn't gotten paid yet. Yeah, I'm not sure what his salary is. That's a good question.
Yeah. And then Atlanta, their pitching is the question, isn't it? I mean, they've got the young talent that's out there on offense and defense, but the pitching – all year has been kind of the big question mark. Even from the beginning of the season, it was, do they have enough pitching to be legit? And that whole NL East was just really bad this year.
Yeah, it sure was.
But Atlanta comes out, and you made the point. They were here last year and succeeded well last year. And so you can't just write them off because the whole division wasn't that great, especially going against a team like Milwaukee they've not proven that they can get over the hump yet either.
Yeah, I really love what the Braves did in the trade deadline. They got Jorge Soler, Adam Duvall, Jock Peterson. They just got these power bats that really ignited their offense. I definitely think they have the advantage as far as explosion goes, and they could score a ton of runs in this series. But I do think Milwaukee has the edge as far as pitching is concerned. Ian Anderson is a young guy. I thought did a nice job for them last season. He seems to be a real gamer for the Braves, that is. But I don't know if they have enough arms to be able to win this series. That being said, if they pull it off, I definitely wouldn't be shocked.
Who's the best manager out of those 4 teams, the NL teams?
Wow. It's hard not to say Dave Roberts. I mean, he's been there. Some of his moves have certainly been questioned. I really like Gabe Kapler as well. I don't think anyone thought that they would be in this position. They were on pace for, I think their projections were 75 wins. They had over 30 more wins than that. I don't mean to play this right down the middle, but I like Craig Counsell too. So if I had to say one, I'd probably give Dave Roberts the nod just because of his experience and, he has won a World Series, but I think we'll see some interesting moves and battling of the wits here. And I think Gabe Kapler's been a great fit in San Francisco as well. It wouldn't surprise me to see them go win the World Series this year.
Milwaukee and Tampa have both their managers are known for kind of thinking outside the box, especially with the pitching and how they use the bullpen and things like that. And, that plays in. That's where the strategy plays in. You get to see, and that's why I love the playoffs, baseball playoffs, is you start to see that strategy really pitch in. Before we switch to the AL, Dad, do you have any questions on National League stuff?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, it's going to be really good. We've talked about the playoffs this year are going to be good. I think it'll get back to seeing a lot of good baseball. There are some stars still in it, definitely with the Dodgers, but it won't be some of the stars, Ohtani and some of them that would have drawn all the attention from there. I think it's going to be good baseball teams. I think you'll see base running, fielding will be an issue. And I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I think you look at those stars you talk about, some of the biggest stars in Major League Baseball just aren't it. Vlad Guerrero is one of those guys that's really blossoming as a star and huge power hitter. Mike Trout, of course, we're used to not seeing him in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's been a while,
But Ohtani had one of these great seasons pitching and batting. Yeah. And not having those teams in the playoffs, I think, stinks for Major League Baseball. But me and Dad have said, Graeme, I think this is the best baseball season we've had in a really long time.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun throughout. And I'm hoping that it keeps up throughout the playoffs and into the World Series. I wrote an article a couple months ago about saying how the World Series ending in the year one, if you go back all the way to 1931, most of them have been real dandies. There's been a couple of stinkers here, but if you think about 1991, Kirby Puckett's home run, Minnesota Twins, 2001, Yankees had that great series against the Diamondbacks, 2011. More recently, Texas and the Cardinals had that really great series. So I'm hoping for more of the same 7-game, knock them out, drag them out, just thriller. So hopefully that trend continues.
Let's switch over to the American League. Houston already up 1-0 on the White Sox. Going into the season, I thought the White Sox could be a real threat. They even added some pieces throughout the year that made them better. But to me, Houston, even though the record doesn't say this, they're the best team in the American League, in my opinion. So let's talk about that series first, Houston and Chicago. How far do you think it goes? How much of a threat is Chicago?
I don't think Chicago is a major threat, Vince. I don't. I think they really benefited from playing in a very weak American League Central. Hey, none of those teams had winning records besides Chicago. So they played 76 games against those teams, and they went, I believe, 44-32 in those games. But they only went 2-5 against Houston. Now, I know the regular season, you could throw that out the window. I just think Houston's got a lot more. They're a bit more of a dynamic ball club. They got more explosion. I really like the outfielders the White Sox were able to get back late in the season, Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert, but I don't think it's going to be enough. And I also wasn't terribly impressed by the relievers that they picked up at the deadline. Actually, Kimbrel blew a few saves since he was acquired by the team. So I think the Astros probably win this one, and I'd say about 4 games. And I'm if it's not Tampa Bay and Houston, I'll be pretty surprised. And I think Houston's got the offensive edge, and I think Tampa Bay's probably got the pitching advantage. So I think that could be a great series. And personally, I'm not ready to see Houston back in the World Series.
It's the cheating's still a little close.
It's a little too soon. Yeah, like they could get to the CS. They got there last year, and gosh, they almost got into the World Series. But I'm not quite ready to see them there. They're proving it, or whatever is what they like to say. But I'm still a little sore, so they could lose. Yeah.
So with the Rays, the Red Sox, they haven't announced who their pitcher is going to be yet. For game one. And, does that really matter?
I mean, you want to try to win the first game, obviously, but as long as they could go with an opener and still end up winning the game. Whether it's Eduardo Rodriguez, or I guess they could go with Chris Sale. I'm trying to think of some of their other pitchers, but I don't know if it really matters. They obviously need Pivetta is the other guy I'm thinking of. Obviously, their bats need to show up, and they've struggled quite a bit against Tampa Bay's pitching. Wander Franco for the Rays, the young shortstop, is a player to watch in the series. He's killed Boston the whole season, and he's had more success against them than really any other team. So he could be really a difference maker in this series. And it doesn't matter, because I think the Boston's going to get outpitched in this series, and that's going to end up being a big difference maker. So they can throw out Sale or Erod or whoever they want to, but they're going to really have to bring it, and the offense needs to show up as well for them to have a good chance.
You may have already answered this question. Randy Arozarena kind of blew up last year in the playoffs. All of a sudden, everybody's like, who's this guy? He was the guy of the playoffs. Is Franco that guy this year, or is there another player on another team that stands out to you as someone that maybe the the non-passionate fan that's just tuning in for the playoffs hasn't really heard about yet?
Yeah, I definitely think that Franco is a candidate to be that guy for sure. Another interesting thing with the Rays is they left Brett Phillips. I don't know if you guys remember. He had that big hit in Game 5 of the World Series last year. He was doing the airplanes in the outfield. Yeah. They left him off the. He's been a great guy to watch. They left him off the DS roster. Instead, they put in Jordan Luplow, who's coming off an injury. He plays first base, and he's kind of an extra outfielder for them. So that's a really interesting move. I thought Phillips was a really valuable player for them. He's fast. He's good on defense, and he's just one of those guys. Everyone on the team just loves this guy. So I thought that was a curious move. So I think Luplow's under a lot of pressure to perform well in the series. And another guy I'll throw out in the National League, we saw him last night. This is maybe an obvious selection, but how about Chris Taylor? This guy was a first-time All-Star. He's probably my favorite player on the Dodgers. You could play him anywhere. He won't hurt you. He had a bit of a rough second half, but he's heart and soul of this team, and I think he'll come up with a big moment when it's needed most.
Brett Phillips was a big prospect in the Brewers organization for a while. He got traded to Kansas City, I think in the Lorenzo Cain trade, if I remember right. And then he was in Kansas City for a couple of years, and then brought over to Tampa. And he's always been a character in a good way, a character, a personality that's fun to watch, and he's had some great moments. He's never been able to pull it together and be consistently just really solid. But that is an interesting move for sure. Yeah. Give us your prediction, not for the World Series yet. We're going to have you back on before the World Series.
All right.
So you said already you expected to be Tampa and Houston in the AL. What about the NL?
I think I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Brewers and the San Francisco Giants.
Okay.
All right. I know the World Series that I'm looking for, but no spoilers. We'll have to save that for another time.
All right, very good. Graeme Wallace, he writes for Belly Up Sports. You can find his articles on bellyupsports.com. You can also find it on Twitter as he shares his articles. Belly Up Sports, of course, does as well. And your Twitter is, remind me, is it Bus Wallace?
Yeah, Bus Wallace. Can I also just mention I've also started writing for jaysjournal.com, so you can find my articles there. I know it's not Belly Up, but I am still coming out with articles for Belly Up. I'm going to be having one kind of talking about the playoffs and a bit of talk about our conversation and things like that. That should be coming out tomorrow. So all
right. So Jays Journals, that'd be like Blue Jays, correct?
Jays Journal. It's a fan-sided site. So I'm really excited to be writing for them as well.
Awesome. A great opportunity and well-deserved as well. We always appreciate Graeme coming on. He's always well prepared, and we'll bring him back on again as we get closer to the World Series and everything going on there as well. Graeme, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Always a pleasure, Vince and Dale. We'll see you next time.
All right. Tell your wife hello.
Thank you. I will.
All right. Graeme Wallace from Belly Up Sports and Jay's Journal. Again, we really appreciate him coming on and sharing some baseball thoughts with us. Dad, how do you feel about that? He said San Francisco making it past the Dodgers.
He's a good guy. I like that. I like that. So it'll be interesting. But I mean, the Giants have played well all year. I don't see any reason why it would change. But obviously, they're playing Dodgers, and it should be a really good series. And we'll see where it ends up.
Do you agree with him on the American League Astros and Rays going to the next round?
Yes. I think so. Like you said earlier, I thought the White Sox would really be an issue. But when you look how everybody's playing now, I would think that's how it would go. And should be a good playoffs all the way through and a good World Series.
Yeah, I think we're in for a great playoffs. And I think Major League Baseball, right behind NHL, has the best playoffs. I don't watch hockey during the regular season. If the Predators are on, I'll watch for a while. But when it comes to the playoffs, then I turn on hockey. Baseball, now I watched a lot more baseball this year than I usually do. But when you get to the playoffs, even if my team's out, I love watching the baseball playoffs. I think it's just different. There's a different aura around the game and everything that goes on there. And it's just one of those pure things that we can sit and enjoy. I remember thinking back to the earthquake game. I don't remember where we were. Was it Oklahoma? I don't remember where we were when that happened.
Yeah, we were traveling back. We were actually in Arkansas. We were traveling back from Oklahoma.
Yeah, and we were sitting there in the fifth wheel, and all of a sudden the screen went green, and I didn't know what was going on. He talked about that Kirby Puckett play in '91. I remember that. It's clear as day. One of my earlier baseball memories there as well, and just a lot of just different exciting things have happened throughout history. But this year, with the teams that we have in, you're going to have the anti-Astros. Most people are going to be anti-Astros. They don't want them to succeed or win. I don't think they're going to have a problem with Chicago. Of course, I'm a Brewer fan, so I'm excited about that. You're a Giants fan, so you're excited about that. And what we don't want at the end of it all is Dodgers versus Red Sox. So if we can just avoid Dodgers versus Red Sox, we'll be okay and be able to enjoy the World Series this year as well. But it's been a great baseball season, and like I said, we'll have Graeme back on later on here in the playoffs and talk with him some more. Always appreciate Graeme and his willingness to come on and his readiness. He's always just well prepared, so we appreciate that as well. Make sure you visit bellyupsports.com and Jay's Journal, and you can and read Graeme's material, his articles and things like that there as well. All right, Dad, let's make the transition to the NFL. And we've got another week coming up. Of course, a game tonight, a pretty big game tonight as well. Let's start with this, and then we'll get to our fantasy football talk. Two moves this week. Stefan Gilmore gets traded to Carolina for a 6th-round pick. And then Jalen Smith, the Cowboys linebacker, gets cut, and Green Bay ultimately signs him. This is 2 weeks in a row now that Carolina's made a move with defensive back. They traded for Henderson from Jacksonville, and now they've traded for Gilmore. As it was announced that he was going to be cut, but they worked a deal out with New England to acquire him for a 6th-round pick. He has been injured. He's probably not in football shape at the moment, but his talent level is pretty high. So what do you think about the things Carolina's been doing even in season to improve as a team?
Well, I think Carolina, has a good team. We've talked about that, and I think they're definitely trying to be, not just competitive this year, but they want to be where they can maybe even challenge for the division, but definitely be an issue in the playoffs. And they seem like an organization that, is that way, aggressive and not going to settle for just, another one more win than last year. And with the moves they've made, and right now it looks pretty good. Of course, they lost this week. I watched a little bit of that game. I thought they played real well, and of course, their star they don't have right now. Pretty close to getting him back, and they could be a lot. They could be a lot to handle. You get McCaffrey back if he comes back and can play the rest of the year.
We'll have to talk about this in another episode because I don't want to get off track time-wise tonight, but Carolina might be better without Christian McCaffrey. I know that sounds weird, but I think there's some potential there that they might just be more balanced when McCaffrey's not there. He's obviously a great player, but anyways, that's a conversation for another day. They're so scared of Jameis Winston that they're loading up with DBs or maybe it's Tom Brady that they're worried about. But they've got quarterbacks in their division that they're obviously preparing for, and they continue to stack up on the defense. And they're kind of putting it together now where they can focus all of next year on filling out and finishing that offense. And so interesting moves by them. The Cowboys cut their linebacker, Jalen Smith. He goes unclaimed. Green Bay signs him. I was hoping the Packers would sign Gilmore, would get Stefan Gilmore, because I think defensive back's an area of need. We've got injuries there with J.R. Alexander injured. Kevin King has been hobbled as well, and we're kind of down to the studs right now. But they go out and they do get a linebacker that should help the team because they're young and inexperienced there. Especially in the middle of the field. So how excited, how much do you care that the Packers go out and get Smith?
Oh, I think that was good. I think, again, that the Packers keep moving. And, of course, with some of the injuries, they probably needed to. But this is an area that's been, before the season, this is probably the area that, Packer fans would say, they really need to address this. Well, it turned out Devontae Campbell's been a great addition, and now you're adding another guy that has a lot of potential. I was reading this week again with the new defensive coordinator, which I'm still a little leery on that, but he's a guy that moves people around a lot and does a lot of things, and it sounds like Jalen Smith's a guy that would really fit into that in a lot of ways, and so I think it's a good move. Like I said, I would hope they would get Gilmore. But that just wasn't able to work out. So, we'll see. And, of course, the injury front, we'll see how quick we get people back or if we're going to lose Alexander for the year. But, again, the defense coordinator, like I said, outside the first game, things have looked pretty good. They're going to have to make adjustments and keep doing things. But they have the ability. They have great assistant coaches, and they should have a good scheme on that. But Smith could be a really good thing.
Yeah, when everybody was screaming the Packers should draft a receiver, and then they drafted Jordan Love, they actually passed up on a linebacker and Patrick Queen that could have been helpful, I think, there. I thought that was more important than wide receiver at the time. Of course, they also passed on T. Higgins, but hey, whatever. And ultimately, though, they do address it. The question is it going to be enough to help and fill needs and things like that? How will he fit on the team? All those sorts of things. It's just nice as a Packer fan to see us go out and get somebody that people actually know and not some undrafted guy that, we're supposed to get excited about. So speaking of big additions, how's your fantasy football team doing, friends? Are you picking up the right people? Are you dropping the right people? Has your draft and your top guys you drafted completely underwhelmed this year? Well, here to talk about that and a little bit more is my friend, the man, the myth, the legend, Kevin Wilson from BellyUpSports.com, BellyUpFantasySports.com. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Vince, you got the pressure on me because I follow up behind Graeme. That's a tough act to have to come up behind. So I'm going to have to bring on the power right now to match up with him. So I'm going to have to see how I do.
And not only that, we have you distracted because Seattle is playing right now.
That's right.
And although we tried
big pass play,
although we tried to warn you that Seattle was going to have a down year this year, you still hold out hope that all is well.
They pulled it out against San Francisco last week. I really didn't have a whole lot of confidence in them, and because they have a pub around here which they cater to the Seahawk fans, and my wife was like, well, do you want to go? I'm like, well, last thing I want to do is go and see them lose to the 49ers because, I hate them worse than anybody else, even the Russians, you know what I mean? So I decided not to go. And then, they turned around and they beat them. So
yeah, I didn't realize
I'm back on the bandwagon. I'll see how long that lasts, how they do later on today. And I just want to say to my buddy Graeme, Graeme, Dodger, get on it.
Kevin, I didn't realize your hatred for San Francisco ran that high, so that's good to know.
When you're a Dodger fan, you hate San Francisco.
I see.
If you're a Seahawk fan, you hate San Francisco. You know what I mean? There's just no two ways around it. And so, if they slid off, right into the bay, that would be, that'd be okay.
Oh boy, you're well. That could happen, but we'll wait to see.
I'm not going to advocate for that, tonight. But
okay. Let's talk fantasy football. Kevin writes for BellyUpFantasySports.com. He comes out with a weekly article, and some weeks, depending on work schedule, things get shifted around a little bit. But let's start with just the basic question: who are the guys right now that fantasy football owners should be looking to add to their team?
Well, I'm going to start off with the quarterbacks, and I've got 3 of them. And you talked about Carolina a little bit ago. Sam Darnold is a legitimate fantasy quarterback. And the reason why I say that is against Dallas, he had 2 touchdowns throwing. He had 2 touchdowns running. He's got 5 rushing touchdowns on the season. That beats a lot of running backs. And he had 51 fantasy points against Dallas. That's bringing on the power right there. He's got the Eagles up next, and the Eagles just we kind of suspected maybe they wouldn't be that great this year. Well, they're not. And 36 fantasy points is the fewest that Sam Darnold has had so far this season. So if you're looking for a guy that has a high ceiling and a pretty safe floor as well, Sam Darnold goes right to the top of that list for me.
And on ESPN, he's only owned by 37% of teams.
Yep, 37.4%. I got the number right here. So, if you have any kind of quarterback issues at all, get Sam Darnold on your team. Another guy that I'm going to advocate for this week, maybe not for the season, that's Danny Jones, for the Giants. He threw for 402 yards last week. That's got to be by far the most yards he's ever had. He had 2 touchdowns against New Orleans. We all know New Orleans, you don't know what you're going to get out of them from one week to the next. But we do know that he's got Dallas up next. And, their defense does look better, but they're still the Dallas defense. So, and the Cowboys offense is explosive. I think that's going to be a pretty high scoring game. And especially if Sterling Shepard, their wide receiver, he was out last week. If he's back, that's going to help them a lot. And so I like him a lot. He's at 39%. And another guy, a veteran that people just were like, dude, why are you even, getting out of bed? That's Matt Ryan. Yeah. And Atlanta, they are a disaster, as far as the football team is concerned. But he had 4 touchdowns this past weekend. And so he had 49.5 fantasy points. You can certainly use 49.5. And he had 40 against Tampa Bay. So it's not like, he's a flash in the pan. And the best news of all, he's got the New York Jets up next in London.
But I don't know if you got to see this today or not. He's without his top 2 receivers this week in London. Calvin Ridley did not make the trip due to personal matters.
I did not see that.
Russell Gage is injured, so he did not make the trip either.
That,
so Kyle Pitts owners, go all in this week on Kyle Pitts.
Well, if you have Cordarrelle Patterson, you better get that dude in your lineup. Because he had 3 touchdowns all by himself last week, and so
Matt Ryan fits that mold. Matt Ryan fits that mold of he's going to be losing coming into the fourth quarter every week.
That's right.
So he's going to be throwing the ball a ton, and they're going to get better. This team. They're a team that really looks bad, but they're going to get better, I think. I think their coach, it's taking some time. They're going to have to get some better players, especially offensive linemen, but they're going to slowly improve this season. They're not going to finish well, but they're going to slowly improve. And Matt Ryan, I've heard people compare him with Ben Roethlisberger. I would take Matt Ryan over Ben Roethlisberger.
Absolutely. Ben Roethlisberger, you talk about a guy that probably should stay in bed. That's him right there because he's, he's hurt. And he's got Harris over there, and and what else does he have? His wide receiver's been banged up, so you saw that because they just got done playing your Packers.
Yes,
and it wasn't looking good for I've got Roethlisberger on a couple of my teams, and it's just not looking good for him at all.
I tell you, I watching that Packer game, and I thought if they had a good quarterback, they would have had a couple more touchdowns because there were passes that just floated right over Juju, over other receivers that would have been easy touchdowns. they had the Packers beat, and the pass just wasn't there. And maybe that was because there was pressure on Roethlisberger. I don't know, but I'm all out on Pittsburgh right now. I'm staying as far away as I can. I said at the beginning of the season, Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson, I think I'm saying that right, were the only two guys I would even look at when it came to Pittsburgh. They're not good. Talk to us about some guys. Let's start with the underwhelming. The guys that we drafted in the first couple rounds that we had high anticipation for. Guys kind of like Kyle Pitts, right? Pitts they haven't used him yet. So guys that we expected something out of, and thus far in the fantasy world, we haven't gotten much out of them.
Well, the first person that goes right to the top of my list is Myles Gaskin from the Miami Dolphins. And he may not have been a player that you might have took in the first couple of rounds, but he was a guy that a lot of people thought that, he was going to get their Miami offense going. Well, how about he has no touchdowns and 28 fantasy points through 4 games.
Wow.
And you're in the same league as I am, Vince, and you probably saw that guy is now on our waiver wire. So 4 games in and he's on the waiver wire, that is not a good sign at all.
Gaskins is the kind of player that guys are like, I'm going to pass on running back early because I can get Gaskins late.
Right.
And now they're sitting there going,
advocate that no running back, strategy, which I do not. I don't go for that sort of thing, but there are guys that are out there. If you happen to get Myles Gaskin, you're snake bit. That's all there is to that. So he goes right to the head of the list.
Who else is underwhelmed so far?
Underwhelmed is a guy that the Rams, that they lost all their running backs because they broke their bones and stuff early on, and they brought in Sony Michel, and same story that a lot of guys thought that he's going to come in there and he's really going to do some things in that offense. Well, how about this? You know how many points he had last week against Arizona?
No.
He had -1.
Ouch.
That's almost an impossibility to accomplish. You know what I mean? I had no points, and I didn't have a negative point. So, and he's owned in 56.6% of leagues.
Really?
And, yes. And so that is not looking good. And we talked about Gaskin. He's at 82%. And so there are a lot of guys that,
if you own Sony Michel, drop them and pick up Gaskins. At least you get some positives.
Something positive, yeah. And a guy that's owned in 74% of leagues is Brandon Ayuk. I never could figure out how to say that guy's last name.
Ayuk, Ayuk.
Okay, that's pretty good. He had 13 fantasy points in week 3. He had 5 points otherwise total in the other 3 games. So
you don't have to tell me. I drafted Brandon Ayuk in every league I was in. I still own him in, I think, 1 league. I think I've got rid of him in the other leagues. Nope, 2 leagues. I tried to get rid of him, but I didn't get a waiver claim. You talk about disappointments. Him and Deebo Samuels, I thought both would have great years. Deebo Samuels is looking pretty good. Brandon Ayuk on the other side, not good.
Yeah. San Francisco, they thought that maybe they were going to be one of the great teams because they started off 2-0 and everything's all yay. And they're 2-2 now, and they got the Rams coming in there this Sunday. And the Rams just got spanked. That's about the worst thing that could happen for the 49ers to me because they're smarting. And I think they're going to put it on the 49ers this weekend.
Yeah, I think they got the Cardinals, I think, right? Rams are playing your Seahawks.
That's right.
Now.
Rams are playing today.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals blew out the Rams. They've what 4,400 points on them or something like that.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest surprises I've seen, where they thought these 2 3-0 teams were going to go toe to toe, and it might be come down to the last minute. Well, by the first quarter was over, the Cardinals had them in their rearview mirror, and they just cruised on the rest of the way. So,
well, as I always say, if you'll just watch the Sports Stove podcast, you'll know who's going to win these games. I picked Arizona last week. I was all over that one. Bullishly on Arizona last week, bullishly against them this week, but we'll get to that in just a second. Okay. Nonetheless, anybody that you'd say, hey, they have they've really stepped it up so far. Early season, most improved fantasy player, guys that were drafted lower, maybe less anticipation, expectation, and have overachieved.
Well, yeah, a player that has impressed me greatly is Tyler Boyd of Cincinnati. As he was supposed to have Jamar Chase and all these other guys that were going to be ahead of him, and well, I went ahead and I drafted him in the 10th round, and this is what he's done. He has 14, 13, and 22 fantasy points the last 3 games, and he had 9 catches for 118 yards against Jacksonville. So all he has to do is actually break through because he doesn't have a touchdown yet. But if he does that, the Cincinnati offense can support 3 wide receivers. And so I am quite pleased with the 10th round draft pick that has 22 fantasy points in a game. So
me and Dad were both big on T. Higgins, and then you add in Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase has had a phenomenal rookie season so far. Tyler Boyd, you're right, he hasn't gotten the touchdowns, but he's trusted. Joe Burrow trusts him, and all 3 of those receivers are worthy to have on a fantasy football team. Tyler Boyd, you could almost call him a handcuff when it comes to receivers, but he's probably not available in any leagues. So, but yeah, great. You're right. Tyler Boyd's had a great season so far, and he's going to get some touchdowns before this season's over.
Absolutely. And, well, one player that I have to bring up that might just be the waiver, we talked about him a minute ago. He's the waiver wire acquisition of the year, unless something really blows up later on. We talked about Cordarrelle Patterson. That's the guy that just 2 weeks ago was on the wire. And if you listen to one of my articles, pick him up. Some people listen. And like I said, he went out and scored 3 touchdowns this past week. And so I think that I can't imagine somebody else coming off the waiver wire that will, have an impact as big as him the rest of the way. So I like him a lot. A player that surprised also, how about A.J. Green, right, from Arizona? Yeah. This guy that's been injured, the last 2-3 years, whatever it's been, and he's been overshadowed by a wide receiver named Rondell Moore, right? And so everybody rushed to the wire to get Moore. Well, he's back on the wire, and why is that? Because A.J. Green has 2 touchdowns on the season. He's averaging he has had 18 fantasy points each of the last 2 weeks. And it's obvious that he's a trusted wide receiver now on Arizona. And I don't see anybody slowing down that offense.
And here's a fun stat for you. A.J. Green has had 6 targets in every game this season.
I saw that. In all 4 games, he has 6 targets. So talk about a safe floor. Does it get any safer than that?
Yeah, and he's gotten better. He was 2 for 6 in week 1, 3 for 6 in week 2, and 5 for 6 the last 2 weeks. Week 3 against Jacksonville, he had 112 yards, no touchdowns. Last week against the Rams, he had 67 yards and 1 touchdown. And you're right. I think he's safer than Rondell Moore at this choice. If you're in a dynasty league, a keeper league, then Rondell Moore's better because he has a longer future. But if you're just in it for this
Green's
season,
been around since dinosaurs roamed the earth, so he's definitely not a guy for dynasty. But
but to win now, he's a guy to look forward to.
Yeah.
All right. Kevin Wilson, writer at BellyUpFantasySports.com. He hosted Belly Up Fantasy Baseball Show that I was privileged to be on. And a lot of great stuff coming from Kevin, a friend, even though we've never met face to face, but he's helped me out a lot with writing I write the EKU articles, and Kevin's helped me out with editing and getting those posted and things as well. Kevin, thank you so much. Tell us about you've got a ColorCast show that you do each week now.
I do. It's called the Wilson Weekend Sports Review, with your host, of course, me, Kevin Will C. Wilson. Because we'll see what's going on out there. And that comes on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Time. And if you have an iPhone, you have to have Apple to be able to have the ColorCast app. But if you do have that, and just get on there, join me up at 10 o'clock. And since it's a sports show, it doesn't have to be about basketball or football.
Right.
It's whatever the big events are that's going on over the weekend. And since I'm the host, I'm the one that decides what those big events are. But there is a microphone that people can actually click on that and become part of the show.
Wow.
And so if there is a big event that you think that's going on out there, just get on there, click on that, and let me know what that is, because I'm not a soccer guy. I'm not a golf guy. You know what I mean? I'm not UFC. And so if one of those is a big event, get on there and let me know what that is. And I'll be more than happy to talk about it.
Awesome. All right. So that's Saturday mornings, 10 o'clock
morning.
Central Time.
Central Time.
All right. 10 o'clock in the morning Central Time on the Colorcast app. And you can find you have to say it again. Wilson. Say it again.
Wilson. It's the Wilson Weekend Sports Review.
Okay. That's what I was going to say. But
yeah.
All right. Very good.
So Vince, I didn't get a chance to dig on you because the two of us played last week and I took you down. So we're
out of time, Kevin. Sorry.
So.
Yes. We'll have you back on when we have more.
The EKU thing has worked out for you, Vince. I'm really glad about that. So
thank you very much. We've loved it. The EKU community has been awesome, and that's continuing to grow. So we appreciate that. We'll have you back on when we've got more time to talk to you. We kept Graeme on too long. I don't know what we were thinking, but
Graeme, like I said, brings on the power. So I'm totally down with that. And he's a fun guy, and he trips me out when he puts that little from that the mom when she realized she left Kevin back home when home alone and
yeah.
So I get a kick out of that. So Graeme, just so you know if you're watching this, just so you know.
All right, Kevin Wilson from BellyUpFantasySports.com. You can also find him on the Colorcast app. Kevin, thank you so much for being with us.
It's always a pleasure, Vince.
All right, we'll see you. That's Kevin Wilson again from BellyUpFantasySports.com. Dad, when we have two guests on, it doesn't leave us a whole lot of time. So we're going to have to get moving here for these pick sixes so everybody can know. Last week was a good week for both of us. You went 3-6 on your picks. I was able to go 5 for 6. And I thought I was going to go 6 for 6 there for a while, but that Washington game ended not so pleasantly for me. But nonetheless, let's get to our weekly pick 6 picks, where we pick 6 games in the NFL, and we pick according to the spread or against the spread for these games. Dad, give me your first game that you got this week.
I'm going to take Denver over Pittsburgh, and I think it's even now. And
yep. Yeah, so I'm actually going opposite of you on that one. I'm taking Pittsburgh with it being even. I'm assuming Teddy Bridgewater's out with the concussion. So Drew Lock's the quarterback in Denver. And even though I kind of like Drew Lock better than Ben Roethlisberger, I'm going to go with Pittsburgh in that game there as the line is even. All right, who's your second game?
I'm going to take Carolina to cover against Philadelphia.
What's the line on that one?
I don't have it right in front of me. I think
pull
it's
it up.
3 or 4.
All right, let me pull it up real quick because last week I didn't write down, and I'm not sure if they changed or not. Let's see here. You said Carolina
over Philadelphia.
Over Philadelphia. 3. 3 is the line there. So you got Carolina -3 over Philly. All right, who's your third game?
I'm going to take Vegas to cover over Chicago.
All right, so I'm going the opposite of you on that one as well. That's 5.5. Vegas is the favorite. I'm going to take Chicago at +5.5 in that game there. So I'm going to go opposite of you on that one as well. What's your fourth game?
Buffalo and the points against Kansas City.
There you go. That's a good one. I'm going to go opposite of you on that one too. Buffalo, though, is the underdog. 2.5 points there for Buffalo. And that's going to be a game right there. It's Sunday night, which I'm excited about. We'll get to see. That might be the game of the week. Would you think that would be true?
It should be a very good game. I think Buffalo's really rolling now. Kansas City struggled a little bit, but it is at Kansas City, so should be a great game.
Yeah, if Kansas City loses that one, they're in a really interesting spot this season. They'd go down to 2-3. And with that West being as good as it's been so far, that'd be crazy. Game number 5 for you.
I'm going to take Indianapolis and the points against Baltimore. I think Baltimore may win, but I don't know that they'll cover that. So I'm going to go with Indianapolis and the points.
Indianapolis, a 7-point underdog by a whole touchdown. There, I took Indianapolis last week and it paid off for me. I'm scared of them this week, though. But there you go, Indianapolis over Baltimore +7. And your last one?
I'll take Green Bay to cover over Cincinnati. Why it could be a very good game. I think we'll come out and play well, and so I'm going to pick them.
They're a 3-point favorite in Cincinnati. I'm taking them as well. This is the first time this season, I think, that I've taken Green Bay. But I think I took them week 1 against New Orleans, which wasn't good. But taking them again this week as well. So you've got Denver, who's even against Pittsburgh. Carolina, 3-point favorite. Vegas, a 5.5-point favorite. Buffalo, 2.5-point dog. Indianapolis, a 7-point dog, and Green Bay, a 3-point favorite. I'm going with the Green Bay -3 versus Cincinnati. I'm going Detroit +10 against Minnesota. A divisional game. I just don't see Minnesota winning by 10 points. So I'll take Detroit +10. Pittsburgh even over Denver. Chicago +5.5 versus Vegas. I think we might begin to see a slide for Vegas, kind of coming back down to where we expected them to be. Mediocre team this season. Chicago's coming off a big win and an opportunity there to play again. Justin Fields getting more comfortable in the system. So +5.5 Chicago. I'm taking San Francisco +5 over Arizona. And I'm big on Arizona, like them, but San Francisco's too well coached, I think, to continue to have some different struggles. They're 2-2. Carolina's undefeated. They're not going to go undefeated this season, so someone's got to push them. I'll take San Francisco there. Even if they lose, it'll be by a field goal. So I'll take them. And then I take Kansas City, the 2.5-point favorites over Buffalo. We got some good games this week. Browns and Chargers is a really good game, I think. The Chargers 2-point favorites at home. Let's see here. Cowboys-Giants usually turns out to be a good game, even though the Giants aren't any good this year. How about the good old Titans-Jaguars game? Back in the day, Titans-Jaguars was such a fun matchup. Jeff Fisher would just prod at the Jaguars fans. And that was back in the Jimmy Smith, Fred Taylor, those days. Mark Brunell was the quarterback. Those days, a different age for Jacksonville, needless to say. Let's talk quickly. We're almost out of time, but Urban Meyer, head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, didn't get on the plane after the game against Cincinnati, stayed in Ohio, then got caught. Well, I say caught. There was a video of him in his bar in Ohio having a young lady dancing on his lap, inappropriately grabbing her, and all this while his wife was at home babysitting the grandkids. And his team was back home, by the way, as well. Urban Meyer, I heard the accusation today or yesterday that Urban Meyer's trying to get fired so he can still get paid and not have to coach in Jacksonville. What's going on with the Jaguars and Urban Meyer?
Well, I mean, the Jaguars were struggling anyhow, and this is going to be a huge distraction. It's not going to help. Urban Meyer, I would assume things are, I don't believe it's probably the first time that's happened, even though he hadn't really been in question before. It'll be interesting to see how Jacksonville handles it. We saw the owner said, well, he has to get the confidence back. I saw Urban Meyer made the statement, well, it was stupid. It was a stupid mistake. Question is, do you want someone stupid coaching your team? And he may not survive this very long. But we will see. Jacksonville, I think, with Trevor Lawrence, I think, boy, they have, potential. They need to have a good year, even though they may get a high draft pick. And this is going to be tough to overcome for Jacksonville.
Is Urban Meyer the first head coach fired this season?
The two coaches that I think are really in trouble are first-year coaches, which is him and Campbell at Detroit. But I don't know that you get fired during the year. I think Meyer could, just because of this incident that happened. So we will see. Or again, he may step down or whatever. But yeah, I would think he could be the first coaching change.
I think it's between him and Zimmer in Minnesota. Minnesota's underperforming at this point, and I think Zimmer's the guy to watch for there. Campbell's not getting fired, even though they're not winning. The players like him. I think the fans like him as a whole. We need to bring in a Lions fan and ask about that. But, yeah, I think it's between Zimmer. But at this point, it looks like Urban Meyer's the guy because there's dysfunction, there's losing, and now there's controversy. So that adds to it as well. All right. Well, Dad, it's been a fun show today. Graeme Wallace came on from Belly Up Sports, Kevin Wilson from Belly Up Fantasy Sports. Great conversations there. Please remember to go ahead. Oh,
yeah, so great information and great guys. Glad we could have them on.
And we'll get them back on again in the future episodes. Visit law-terrain.com. Use the code SportsStove. Get 10% off your purchase there. We'll be back next Thursday live here at 8 o'clock. We'll also have the Wednesday local hour episode with EKU football and Kentucky, and we're working on some things there as well that you can make sure you subscribe to the Sports Stove podcast so you don't miss anything there. Thanks to Graeme. Thanks to Kevin. Thanks, Dad. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.